Yep, I'm recording.
Awesome, awesome. So Rachel has a really good topic today, which will basically be continuing from the previous week of conversation of narcissists.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to tell everyone what this topic is about?
Sure. Yeah. So this topic is about this feeling of indebtedness, which is really common after a sustained period of narcissistic abuse. And the typically that feeling of indebtedness is somewhat already there, and which is why narcissists and empaths are such magnets for each other, because a narcissist already feels entitled and an empath already kind of feels the opposite, because the empath we base a lot of our self-worth and how much we can give to others, how much we can provide, how much we can heal, how much we can help. So even if an empath has done work on oneself and is pretty sure-footed and confident, which is typically what narcissists target, is that confidence, that confident empath, they will naturally get into these patterns with the narcissist where the empath's self-worth is consistently devalued, and the narcissist will continue to drain more and more light from the empath, because none of that love or energy or support that the empath is feeding the narcissist is taking root. So while the empath has this feeling of, well, the empath would have no idea that it's not taking root, because in an empath's world, if you give someone love and emotional support, then that person flourishes. So, and it takes root in the heart. So it can be really confusing. And over time, over a long period of time in these cycles, that feeling of indebtedness, especially because the empath after a certain point has attached so much to that journey with the narcissist, after so many repetitions of apologies and promise to change and epiphanies, and like all of a sudden the narcissist will say, oh, I understand, I'll change, I'll go to therapy, I'll do this, I'll quit drinking, whatever it is. So it's just enough to keep the empath in these cycles.
Yeah.
And so over time, that devaluing, because I can't remember if we talked about the love bomb, devalue, discard cycle.
No.
Okay, so here's how the narcissistic abuse cycle works. It's love bomb, devalue, discard. So what happens in the love bombing stage is the narcissist will say everything that the empath ever wanted to hear. I've never met anyone like you, you're so amazing, like just everything. And even if the empath isn't looking or isn't interested, what that does is it activates all those chemicals in the brain that feel good, like the endorphins, the serotonin, all that good stuff. And once the brain's not receiving that anymore, we want more. So so the narcissist will keep up that love bombing until they've hooked their target. And then as soon as they know they've hooked that target, as soon as it's being reciprocated, then they begin that next stage, the devalue stage. And they can keep an empath in the devalue stage for a long time. Like in situations with narcissistic parents and empath children, it could be for life. Mm-hmm. And the narcissistic parent will never tell their kid that they're good enough or that they are enough just as they are, and so that child will consistently be trying to prove herself and never really receive that validation. So in a relationship, romantic relationship, that devalue stage can also last a while, And during that stage, the narcissist will typically say things like, I mean, from my own experience, there were things directed at my personality, my looks. So,
It almost sounds like they take it, because when you started talking about the empath and when the narcissists see the empath, and no matter how um, healed they are, how strong they are, I just pictured a little chihuahua taking nips and bringing the empath down, and it sounds like this is where the little chihuahua will take jabs in the areas of where you have already expressed where you're sensitive.
oh yeah.
And that's why it hurts, and that's why it breaks you down like that. And no matter how strong the empath is, it does break that wall down.
That is such a great point. Especially because in that love bombing stage, the empath thinks that we have found the one. Like everything we've ever wanted to hear this person saying. And it's because they're studying you. Like
Yes.
They're brilliant in a cerebral way. Like they can they understand everything from a conceptual basis. They don't necessarily feel it. So
they process information differently than us, whereas we kind of see the purpose of everything. And so do they, but they see the purpose of things in a different way, whereas this is what you're doing, this is who you are. Oh, the purpose of that is for me to go and challenge that.
And get what they see people as supply, energetic supply. And throughout their lives, they have figured out how to manipulate and get what they need out of people. So it's kind of this like consistent level 3, which is still anabolic, but it's that level of like the mindset at level 3 energy is I win. If you win too, that's great, but either way I win. So that's always there. Like they always want to win. And then if they're challenged, then it's level 2, level 1. And so that what you said, Yana, about them targeting those wounds, when we're in that love bombing stage and we think we found the one, we can tell them anything because they've studied our intellect. And that's something about empaths that I don't know if empaths realize, but our intellect is pretty I was gonna say delicious, but I'll stick with it. It's delicious and fascinating, and narcissists love it because at the same time we have this intellect, that we kind of have this deeper understanding of the world around us, which also gives us that compassion that we have. So they study our intellect and then use it to keep us hooked because we think no one's ever understood us before. And the narcissist might understand us on a cerebral level, but not at the level of the heart. So that's when we're confiding in the narcissist, telling them our deepest, darkest shadows and our wounds, they're listening and initially can put on a really good show like they care, but what they're actually doing is listening for what they can use later against us. And then that's during the devalue stage, that's what comes out. Like when in a past relationship, when I confided about the troubles I was having with my family and with my friends, my ex literally said one day, he's like, that's why all your friends and family hate you. Another one about that was an attack on my personality, which is also a kind of personality trait that other empaths share, is the tendency to overthink, and especially when there are holes in the story. And living with a narcissist is so maddening for an empath because there's always holes in the story. So we're always overthinking, trying to piece it together. And it's not necessarily for the sake of getting anyone in trouble or proving a point. It's just for the sake of trying to make sense out of what's happening.
Yeah.
So that came up once my ex said to me, he's like, you said something like, you think too much, that you're going to scare everyone away. And I remember thinking, and all these insults at the time, I knew they weren't true. But over time, over 3 years,
they still hurt, whether they're true or not. They still hurt because this person has now made you feel like you found the one, and any words that come from the one, they hurt. And it leaves, if not a scar, at least it leaves a stain.
And it stays in the mind.
Yes.
Like, that is
it adds to the messaging.
Exactly. Like, that's the person in our life that we spend the most time with. If it's a romantic partner, we spend the most time talking with. So their voice is going to remain in mind. Like, it's going to become part of what I call the quantum feedback loop. Like, any information that we continues on in our brain after the experience itself. So that it's like, so it stays in a loop. And so even though, I don't know if you remember this in Mod 1, they had us, at least in my module, they had us call a friend, like actually just randomly call up a friend and say, hey, tell me the things you like about me. Did they have to do that?
Yeah, we did, but that's something I didn't actually end up doing that because I had recently just done something like that.
Oh, cool.
I reached out to a couple of people to ask, like, what do they really think of me, honestly, right? Anything goes. And it's an interesting thing to do. So anybody watching who has not done anything like that, I would highly recommend.
Yeah.
And obviously you don't want to be calling the people that despise you or might be like super, super angry with you at the moment. But then again, even they can tell you something that you can learn about yourself that you've never even known.
Yeah. And in this case with my friend, I called my roommate from college, and she told me that something she loves about me is that I'm always thinking. And she attributed my thoughtfulness to the fact that I'm always thinking. So when my ex told me that I think too much, and that scares people away, I had that information from my roommate from college, and I was like, that can't be true because Lindsay said that is a good thing about me. So it was really helpful to counterbalance what I was feeding the bad wolf. It was like being able to feed that good wolf from that information from Lindsay versus feeding the bad wolf. But the battle was always there.
Yeah.
And anytime I contracted into level 1, all of the negative things that he said and that anybody has said about me would just like be at me like a million chihuahuas nipping at my wound.
Yeah, and then all the good things that other people told you, they kind of like disappear. It almost feels like they don't exist, and you're just, for me, it's like, and then I'm just alone with all the chihuahuas.
Yep.
Literally all around me, and like, oh my God, go away, shoot.
Yeah. Oh God. And they don't shoot. Like, that's the hardest part about level 1, being contracted into that victim energy, is that we really are like, it's an internal thing. So if I'm in level 1, I'm the only person who can get myself out of it.
Yeah.
So I'm the only one who can expand beyond the point of like hiding with the chihuahuas and actually expand to anger first and fight the chihuahua. Like, that's it. I'm sick of this. I'm sick of the fucking chihuahua.
Yeah, I was just thinking that maybe instead of biting the chihuahuas and getting angry with the chihuahuas, I mean, I love dogs, any kind of dog. So it's like, oh, come here. You're so sweet. You're so cute.
Oh, yeah.
Like, why do you say these things to me, right? Why? because the thought of like that phrase, you attract more flies with honey
Mm-hmm.
or more bees, because
Yeah.
flies do love shit. So you attract more bees with honey than you do with vinegar, so to speak. So by being nice to them, and it's like, okay, well, thank you, I appreciate it, but you know what? Especially Biggie Smalls.
Yeah.
It's like, but you know what? Somebody else told me, the same thing, but in a different way, where they see it as a value of mine. And that this is one of my awesome qualities, but you're telling me otherwise. Can you please explain why that is?
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like having a conversation with a little chihuahua. Because one of them barks louder than the other. So it's kind of like an exercise that someone can do. Somebody can, maybe like for somebody else, it might be cats. It might be Saint Bernards. It might be a dog. It might be an elephant. It might be a tiger. It might be something, whatever it is, right? I just saw kind of like chihuahuas nipping at the shins when you were starting the conversation in the beginning.
Yeah.
By seeing this, whoever you see, and then having a conversation with whichever one barks or speaks loudest, might be helpful to release that energy. I've never actually done it in that way. I've done it in the way where kind of like questioning the validity of whatever was replaying in my mind. And sometimes, depending if it comes to mind or not, is where did that come from?
Mm-hmm.
Like, who said it to me? Who gave this phrase to me? Because I know it wasn't me, because we're all born loving ourselves. And then little by little, we forget that that is actually the biggest reason for living. It's to actually love ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Because if we don't love ourselves, then we truly don't know what love actually is. How can you know what it is if you haven't even tasted it?
Yeah. Something that a friend said once that really helped me with this, when I was letting all those thoughts play in my head of every negative thing that anyone close to me has ever said about me, because I was so like, when it's tricky, like PTSD is really tough. Like, it's tricky. It's when you're going through it, it feels impossible to navigate. It feels like everyone, maybe not necessarily is against you, but almost like no one can be bothered to understand where you're coming from and why certain wounds and traumas are so important to address. And so while I was going through that time, and that relationship with my ex was the relationship I actually needed at the time to bring up all my core wounds from childhood and everything that I needed to heal. So because it was so in my face, I was seeing it everywhere in the patterns that my family exhibited from the time I was born. So from the time I was 7 or 8, all the things that I attracted in romantic relationships were because I thought they were normal. I thought those were the normal patterns. And so when I was going through this PTSD state of just rejecting those patterns so aggressively and erratically, and there's a lot of volatile behavior from me. And so I could hear, I knew everything that my family was saying about me, also from an accidental screenshot that my dad took of a conversation he was having about me, and he accidentally sent it to me, which kind of exacerbated the paranoia.
Was that a screenshot look or an audio recording?
He took a screenshot of a conversation he was having.
Oh, like a texted one. Oh.
Yeah, and he meant to send it to my brother and my mom, and he sent it to me and my brother, or me and my mom. I can't remember exactly. It was 2 years ago, and I just like I was already trying to recover from PTSD from my ex, and it actually the result of that was I went back to my ex because I was trying to live with my parents, trying to heal all these childhood wounds, and then that surfaced. So then I split, went back to my ex, and which is kind of wild to think like that was someone who was really abusive felt safer to me than my family who actually does love me. Like someone who even admitted that he doesn't love me, which is also something to note about narcissists. Once I asked my ex, I was like, do you love me or do you love the way I make you feel about yourself? And he was honest. He straight up said, he's like, the way you make me feel about myself. And I was like, okay, well, this makes a lot of sense. No wonder.
Narcissistic response.
You know, like no wonder. And I was really thankful for that honesty. Like at least he didn't lie.
Yeah.
So I was back living with him, and that's when all the things, like that's why he was able to say your friends and your family hate you, and I believed him. And then I went and lived with a friend in Philadelphia for a little while, and she said something that helped me so much. She was listening to my just like cyclical thought patterns. She was so patient, so kind. She was just witnessing me talk over and over about these things that were going on, these things that that didn't make sense to me and didn't add up. And she just so kindly and gently looked at me and said, why are you listening to the opinions of people you don't trust? And I sat there and was like, whoa, that's such a good point. And then I wrote down everyone I did trust, and at the time, I made a list of everyone I did trust, and you were on it, Yana, and you got me through that time. And then I listed all the things that the people I trusted say about me and think of me.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really helpful. So having a friend like that who can just listen to the madness in our heads is so medicinal because of that feeling of indebtedness.
Yeah.
I remember feeling like if anyone would just give me 5 minutes of friendship, I'll give them anything. Like I'll give them mind, body, spirit. They could have anything they want from me if they would just listen to me for 5 minutes, because all I could talk about was those patterns.
Yeah, that's exactly how it seems to work, because for empaths it sometimes can be difficult to find that trust and belief in themselves from within. And most empaths, as far as I know, are people pleasers, and that is how we also basically do exchange energy, right? But we don't drain the other person like a narcissist does. We all need to exchange energy. So we were entirely drained by the narcissist, and now we need to replenish, and we can't do it ourselves. I mean, we can, we just might not have learned how yet. It really does come down to grounding ourselves for the most part, and listening to the higher coach as opposed to the gremlin, because the gremlin is the narcissist's voice and all the other voices that told us what we can and cannot do in our limitations. And that's why we seek out external approval of who we are, and find those people that will tell us who we truly are, as opposed to narcissists who will tell us who we are not. Mm-hmm. Because like the way I hear it is, a narcissist, what a narcissist does to replenish their battery is to drain yours. And the way to drain yours, it's an energy vampire as well, right? But the way to drain yours is to hurt you. So you bleed. Mm-hmm. You bleed your energy out because you're hurting. And that is for you, that means you go to level 1, because that's where you bleed. In level 1, you're wounded. You're a victim of this torture, because sometimes it does feel like that.
Well, it actually is. Something that my ex did and another friend's ex did is kept us up all night. Like would not let us sleep, and that's a form of torture.
Yeah.
Literally, that is used as a torture tactic.
Yes.
So it literally is torture, which is why the PTSD and the complex PTSD are so severe, because we have literally been tortured, and in that weakened state of no sleep, we're also being yelled at. So it's really harmful as well for the immune system.
Yes.
Because we're not getting sleep, we're not taking care of ourselves. And the most beautiful thing about empaths is this whole time we're still trying to heal others.
Yeah, like some people will be like, what the hell is wrong with you? Why are you focusing on everyone else when you're the one that has scars all over you and you're not taking the time to heal yourself?
Well, we don't tell anyone though. That's like, we don't tell anyone until we're at that place of desperation.
When it's already kind of like not necessarily too late, but desperation is a really good word, where we're really like struggling to stay above water.
Exactly. And it's so from that there's this mix of desperation, indebtedness, and trying to maintain relationships through that can be different and trippy. And if people don't really have the care or time or energy to hold space to get to know what we've really been through, then what we can give in our friendship, in our exchanges with friends or family, can be really skewed because we're coming from that place of indebtedness. So it also opens ourselves up to a whole other level of manipulation, because people who maybe mean well but don't realize that they're trying to get something out of us that's not in our best interest, we'll give it to, or either's best interest, we'll give it to them because we just want someone who cares about us. So we just want to be liked
and validated.
Yeah, which is also something that I found, that this is going to be way more difficult for people who have children with narcissists. But for me, keeping myself trying to stay friends with people who were friends with him and initially believed him and took his side in the situations where he was lying about me and making up stories, that feeling of indebtedness and wanting to prove skewed those relationships. So as maybe for other people it's not as to their detriment to stay in touch with those mutual friends, but for me, in the aftermath, what I've realized is I just released all of those relationships when I released him, it would have saved me a lot of trouble of trying to relate and trying to be a friend through that lens of indebtedness and desperation and desire to prove, like wanting them to know my side of it and every little detail about my side.
Yeah.
And I realized that how unhealthy that was. So it's really difficult to consider, especially if for people who have children with a narcissist, but really it's best to no longer be in contact, at least until we're fully healed, with people who took the narcissist side. In some ways of, in some education circles about narcissism, they call those groups of friends the narcissist flying monkeys. And so like trying to stay friends with the flying monkeys afterwards can further damage the psyche, because
definitely. But I can see why someone, like you said, you still try to stay friends with those flying monkeys, And that's because you have just suffered a loss of one, and you don't want to lose the rest of them. And you wanted to save as many as you can before they drown with the gang leader. And that's why it's so difficult, because you weren't just losing one, you were losing so many, and you wanted to keep, and you wanted to not necessarily keep, but I'm not even sure like how to word it, but you didn't want to lose it all at once.
Exactly. There's a lot of nostalgia involved with healing from any relationship, any end of any relationship, not just narcissists, but there's a lot of nostalgia. And anytime we build memories with groups of friends, there is that love is real. If it's coming from the empath's heart, that love is real. We love deep, we love hard. And so when we share in moments, whether it's going to live shows with people, or even just going to a person's house and sitting, like drinking, having a conversation, is we planted seeds of love, seeds of intention in those moments. So to leave them is kind of like leaving a garden that you started, and and it's painful. And so nostalgia can really be tricky. It could keep us coming back for more. And in this situation, like in my situation with the friends who were corroborating his story and believing everything he was saying about me, it was unhealthy, because I wanted to know. Not only did I want to know everything he said about me, they were willing to tell me everything he said about me. So it made my desire to prove, well, that's not true, even though they already figured it out. But it made that sense of indebtedness even stronger, because it felt like I had to prove myself even more to counteract those first impressions, those previous impressions, because I was just imagining, because I could feel it at the time, like, why are these friends like not helping me? And it all makes sense when you realize, oh, they're not helping because they're hearing a completely different story from him, and they believe his story. So it's so unhealthy, because I would just want to go back to all those moments and be like, see, this is what was really going on here. And so that keeps those so many cords tied to those relationships that are just not healthy. And it is scary, considering, like, as you said, it's more loss. So and there's also a lot of addiction involved in keeping those cycles. Like, I was addicted to getting the story straight, instead of just cutting it off and moving, like cutting my losses and moving forward. I wanted redemption from the narrative that he created, and which was impossible. I mean, it's just like it's not even worth it. So
sometimes the best thing we can do is stay silent and not say anything, because it takes a bigger person to walk away and not say anything. That's the phrase I grew up with. So I remember I ended a lot of fights with just walking away. You believe whatever you want to believe, because the only way it will hurt me is if I allow it to hurt me. But if I don't let the words in, and it was easier when I was younger than it is now. But if I don't let the words in, then they can't hurt me, right? You believe whatever you want. It's really not my place or not my job, or nor would I want to even change your mind, because some people are just so stubborn, and that's where the narcissists are. They're so stubborn, and and they stick to their stories and their beliefs and their assumptions and their interpretations of what they think is going on or what they think of who we are.
That they can keep it all straight.
There's no point. It's really like, it's like talking to a wall. And I don't know if you ever tried talking to a wall. I have, and it does not respond.
It listens, at least. I would much rather talk to a wall than a narcissist. I actually spent my childhood talking to my ceiling. So it's like, and at least there's a witness there. Whereas the narcissist is not a witness. That is someone who is there to study and, again, love bomb, devalue, discard. And that discard is, when that discard moment happens, it's so hard to not take it personally, but it's really nothing personal. It's the empath been drained and is showing up drained. As much as we try to fight it, as much as we try to put on the display of we're still full of love and light and still have so much to give, no, we've been drained, and we're not by that point. Our immune system's weak. We've been weakened, and that's when fresh supply looks really appealing to the narcissist. So that's when they discard us for a new target.
Yeah, and the process can be a lengthy process.
Oh my gosh, it is such a lengthy, maddening process.
Yeah, and that's why it stays and creates that PTSD, because it's such a gradual process that by the time we're like, wait a minute, what the hell just happened? I was over here. And I was living my life a certain way, and now I'm like over here.
Oh, that is the worst.
This is like when you wake up and you're like, what the F, guys?
Honestly, that moment of waking up to the fact that I had been with a narcissist and that entire relationship was an illusion, that was more disorienting than my actual spiritual awakening. Than actually waking up and realize that the whole matrix was an illusion. It was that like being told I love you and I want to spend my life with you, and I've never met anyone like you, and I'll never meet anyone like you. All those lies, to then wake up and realize that that was all an illusion. That was one of the most probably the most disorienting moment of my life, which is why we'll go into that over detective mode, overdrive detective, this doesn't make sense. And there are a couple other things that I want to touch on before I leave for the coven call. One of the reasons that I found in working with empaths, that's so hard for empaths to move forward, to just cut our losses and move forward. And as you were saying, just, keep your mouth shut and walking away, is the core values of truth and justice. And so a lot of the work that I've done with empaths in recovery from this is reframing what justice means. And so instead of justice, it can really feel like exposing the narcissist is justice and exposing everything is justice. But it takes a lot of work to reframe it and realize that's actually not justice. Justice would actually be inner peace and health and wellness from within, or whatever it means to whoever we're working with, and maybe for a period of time, exposure, and maybe that does feel like justice, and that's something, just a stage we need to go through. But it's usually an uphill battle because the narcissist will always find a new fan club and always find a new target. So even if we expose the narcissist to their little pod, they'll find a new pod, a new fan club, a new group of flying monkeys. They're experts at this. And
yeah, but it sounds like even the person that wants to expose it, there's nothing anabolic really about it.
About wanting to expose the...
Yeah, the way I hear it, it's almost like the word revenge comes to mind.
Yeah, it's completely catabolic.
Yeah,
and it's so unhealthy. The mind, for me, I used it as creative fuel to help other empaths. But it was really unhealthy to just wanting his friends to know, wanting all the next women, all the future targets to know. Like, I wanted them all to know. And it did fuel a lot of my creative writing, and which was great. But it didn't necessarily bring me peace.
No.
So
No, you wouldn't, because catabolic energy doesn't bring peace. It's draining, right? So it would make sense that in the end, it's not really that beneficial to have that revenge.
Yeah, right.
And I would imagine that some narcissists take it to the next level, not just emotional abuse, but through physical abuse.
Yeah, plenty do.
Yeah. And I know a woman who works with domestic violence victims, survivors, and it's not an easy job to do. And when she lost one of her clients, this was about 4 years ago now, she had to take a year off because it was really difficult for her to live with her client going back to someone who loved her, so she thought, and never hear from her again.
Oh.
So that's the really dark side of narcissists that many people might not even realize, that eventually most of them lead into the physical abuse, because when emotional is no longer enough,
yeah,
it will go to the physical.
That's how desperate they get to control.
Yeah. And there's a whole thing behind why they believe that they have the right to do that. But at the end of the day, no one has the right to harm another living being.
Mm-mm.
Yeah. So this is kind of like an interesting way to end this conversation.
Well, I mean, we can, yeah. All life is sacred. That's a great way to reflect on that. All life is sacred, even our lives. Like it's easy for empaths to view all life outside of us as sacred, but we got to point that inward too and treat ourselves as sacred.
Yeah.
We are sacred beings. We deserve to be here. We deserve to take up space.
Yeah. And put that mask on yourself first before you put it on everyone else. They teach you that in an airplane, they teach you that in CPR, they teach you that in any kind of class, anything you take when it comes to saving another one's life. Take care of yourself first, and when you feel you're safe, then you go and you help the other.
Yes. However long it takes. Self-care, your wellness, our wellness, take care of yourself first.
Yeah.
So that when you are out there helping others, it's coming from a healed place and not a wounded place.
Yeah.
From a wounded place, you never know what you're going to attract into your energy field. Like there are a lot of energy vampires out there in all different disguises. So if we're coming from a wounded place, there's no telling what we might attract.
Yeah, exactly. Well, awesome. This was awesome as always. I'm going to let you run to your call. Hope last week was great.
Oh, it was. I'll fill you in more about that later.
Awesome.
Yeah, thank you so much as always. I love our Monday calls.
Me too. A great way to start the week.
Yeah, really.
Who wouldn't love Mondays because of this?
Right? Exactly.
Yeah. Awesome. So until next Monday then.
Until next time, yeah. And thank you to everyone for listening.
Yes, thank you. And love to hear any kind of feedback or thoughts, ideas, anything. Biggest takeaways. My favorite. Awesome. Okay.
All right. Peace.
Peace. Bye.
Bye.